Morning people, welcome back to F Politics. Today, Policing Minister Chris Philp said,
I would like stop and search to be used more because it takes knives off the streets.
So here's the thing Chris Philp isn't telling you. The Tories, they all know exactly how to solve the problem of knife crime. So aren't we all tired of hearing politicians play games with children's lives? Because you might have heard rapper and campaigner Akala give an amazing speech on this a few years back where he explained how Scotland massively reduced its serious youth violence, or as the politicians love to call it, knife crime. Because Glasgow and Scotland used to be thought of as a knife crime capital in the UK, until eventually, instead of treating it as a policing issue, they treated it as a health crisis, where the symptom was picking up a knife, but the disease? That's poverty, a lack of opportunity to escape poverty, which leads people to turn to crime. Now yes, of course, that involves policing, because the symptom is obviously a problem too, but the police also work to address the disease itself. Part of that involved identifying the people that were the most at risk of turning to crime, and then showing them their options. They worked through police, social workers, and teachers to encourage people to attend sheriff's court, where they said, look, this is the path you're currently on, but we're going to give you some help with housing, relocation, education, and training. And they gave them a number to call if they wanted that help, and many did. And the number of homicides in Scotland went from 137 in 2005 to 51 last year. So the homicide rate in Scotland is halved by treating it as a health crisis, meanwhile in England and Wales, treating it as a policing problem, it's barely gone down 20%. And when I say that the Tories know how to fix this problem, they're simply choosing not to, I mean they know. There are literally blogs about it on the government website. And that blog literally says we cannot simply arrest our way out of the problem. So why is our policing minister saying,
I would like stop and search to be used more because it takes knives off the streets?
Because this is where the political games come into it. Because the law says that police can stop and search somebody if they have reasonable grounds to suspect that individual of committing a crime. And yet the policing minister is saying police should go beyond that, which is why he's then asked,
you can't tell officers explicitly to use it more. You're influencing their judgment.
Well, it's about having the confidence to use it more.
So you want police to trust their gut more, but how has their gut historically played out? Yeah, stopping and searching black people almost 10 times as much as white people. And again, you know that because it's on your government website. And he wants them to lean into that more. He also refers to new powers that they've given the police.
They can also use Section 60 orders. That's where you designate a geographical area where there is a crime problem for a limited period of time, like 24 or 48 hours, and you can do more widespread stop and searches in that area.
But the lesson we're supposed to learn from Scotland is that we should be treating this as a health crisis. I mean, your own government's beating crime plan actually says that there's a link between poverty, a lack of ability to escape that poverty, and turning to crime. And so knowing that, you're basically telling the police to target poor areas and arrest anybody they feel like. Which again, historically hasn't worked out well for people with my complexion. He also talked about using facial recognition to identify wanted suspects.
And if somebody walks down a high street past the camera and they're on that wanted list, they'll be identified. It's incredibly accurate these days because it's driven by artificial intelligence.
In November, Robert Williams, a black man aged 45, a father of two, was held in police custody for 30 hours after AI wrongly identified him as a watch thief. Again, all the tools he's planning to use don't tend to work out so well for those with my kind of skin tone. We've learned that we should be treating this like we treat a health crisis, and the government says that they've learned that lesson.
I'm also working with the Youth Endowment Fund, to which the government has provided £200 million, to develop new projects to identify in local authority areas the, let's say, 50 or 100 young people, maybe early teenagers, who aren't involved in serious crime yet, but might get involved in serious crime as they get into their mid and late teens.
That £200 million was in 2019, and it's supposed to last them 10 years, despite being about 0.3% of the annual education budget. He also said,
we're investing money in violence reduction units, which essentially work with young people in particular at risk of getting into crime to try and stop that happening through mentoring schemes and all kinds of other interventions.
But again, on his own government website it says that only half of the stakeholders they used to do this thought it would help reduce violence, and even those who supported it said there wasn't enough funding for youth services and education to help address the root causes of violence. Which leaves us with the question, do these people really want to address serious youth violence, or is it all just a political game for them? Because I'm not an economist, you're probably not an economist, so judging whether or not X million pounds is needed to fix serious youth violence, maybe that's not for us to decide. But what we can see is, are they giving more money to the places that need it to fix serious youth violence, or are they taking it away? Because we know the main bits of the disease are poverty in urban areas, a lack of education, and a lack of youth services, and the main organisations that fix that are local governments. So let's look at Chris Philp's voting record. Well, like most Tories, he's consistently voted to lower benefits, and he's consistently voted to lower the funding of local government. And as far as the issue of poverty in urban areas leading to an increase in crime, his boss once bragged about defunding deprived urban areas. Now, Government data shows that black families are the poorest in the country, and government data also shows that simply having a black name makes it harder to get a job to escape that poverty. So here's the thing, despite everything I've just said, the comments on this video are going to be filled with people blaming black people. But if you don't treat this issue like a health problem, as we saw in Scotland with predominantly white people, and you treat it like there's just a symptom and no disease, then all you're left with, if you really boil it down, is this idea that black people, genetically in some way, must just like crime. Because if you're saying it's got nothing to do with the environments that black people are put into, then that's got to be what you're saying. Even though we've all seen in recent years that the massive increase in shoplifting, another crime, is a symptom of the cost of living crisis. Although again, Chris Philp also tried to deny the link there. Instead, the Tories would much rather keep making people poor, driving them to desperation, and then over-policing them. And as we learned from Scotland, the way to solve serious youth violence is to fund local youth services and education so that young people never feel the need to pick up a knife. Instead, they're choosing to push for more stop and search, which they know is a racially divisive topic because of its disproportionate impact on black people, so they're playing into the culture war. Because as Lee Anderson told us, that's how they plan to win votes in the election. They are playing games with children's lives for money and power. I'm Femi. Make sure you follow F Politics so politics doesn't F you. Have a great week.